thought I would go live today and talk about spending, which is actually one of my favorite topics. Now, for those of you who don't know, my name is Millennial and I'm a money coach and I help spenders save more money. So in this live, I want to talk through the 3 things that you can do to stop overspending. And if you don't know about my story, you might not know that I am actually a natural spender. I always have been, to the point where I was pretty much living paycheck to paycheck and ended up being in debt because of the way that I was spending money. So I feel like I'm probably one of the best people to talk about this because I've been able to overcome overspending and I now save a lot more money consistently while still spending at the same time. So there are 3 things that I want to talk through that I think you can actually do this week when it comes to spending money and being able to stop overspending at the same time. So I've got some notes and let's talk about the first thing. So the first thing that you can do this week is to evaluate your spending. Now, when I say evaluate your spending, I think people maybe know this, but they haven't actually done it. So I remember one time I was talking to a client and I was trying to figure out what was going on with her spending because she was like, oh, I don't typically spend that much, but when she does spend money, she spends more than she's planned to. And so that then has an impact on the way that she was, she's saving money. And so I asked her, I said, do you evaluate your spending? Do you actually know how much you typically spend on things like eating out, on groceries, or on personal care, or anything like that? And she said yes at first, but then we realized that she didn't actually. And I said that the reason why you consistently overspend in some areas is because you don't know how much you typically spend anyway. And so when you're thinking about how much you want to spend, if you don't really know how much you typically spend, then it's not really going to match up. So what we did is we decided to have a look at her spending and essentially evaluate her spending. So what I said was, let's have a look at what's happened over the past couple of months when it comes to your spending. And one of those things you can do is simply look through your bank statements. And I'm not going to lie, it doesn't have to take long. When you look through your bank statements, you can literally see, okay, I've spent this amount on groceries. I spent this amount on, going out to random restaurants. I spent this amount on personal care. And the reason why you want to do that is not for you to just have a list of things that, you spent money on, but it's for you to evaluate. And when I say evaluate, what I mean is just you want to ask yourself, are you happy with the way you spent money? Are you happy with how much you spent on groceries? Are you happy with how much you spent on eating out? Are you happy with how much you spent on personal care? And it's not for me to tell you, oh no, you shouldn't have been spending this amount of money, but it's for you to ask yourself, do you still want to carry on doing that? Or are there maybe some areas where you realize you spent money on some things and you didn't actually want to spend money on that? If, for example, you're someone who tends to go to, corner shops all the time and you spend, a little amount here and there, but you go there consistently every couple of days, that potentially can add up. And my question is, are you happy with that? Or do you or you might realize that actually I don't really want to be going to the corner shop that often because I just buy random things anyway and I don't really care about it. So then you can potentially make savings there, because if you then stop doing that, then obviously you can save that money and you're less likely to overspend. So when we're talking about overspending, it's actually not overspending in general. There's no key rule on how much you should be spending. But what you need to think about is, are you happy with the way you're spending money? And those are 2 different things, because I can't tell you, oh, you should only be spending, 100 on eating out, because if eating out is really important for you, but then something else isn't that important, well, then who am I to judge how you should be spending your money? And so it's not about just having a certain amount that you have to spend. It's actually really asking yourself, okay, well, what am I happy to spend? How much do I want to spend? And you do that by evaluating and seeing how you actually spent before. So use your past to help you, guide you, and figure out, okay, am I happy with this, or do I feel like I want to make changes? I've used this example before, but when it came to buying clothes, I realized that I was spending a lot of money on clothes, but the difference was that I wasn't wearing half of them. They were just collecting dust in my, in my closet. And so I asked myself, okay, do I want to continue spending that amount on clothes, or would I rather use that money for something else? And I realized I would rather use the money for something else, because I was pretty much just wasting that money, because I wasn't even using it. I wasn't actually wearing the clothes. And so you want to look at areas and ask yourself, are there areas where you just feel like, actually, I'm just kind of wasting money here because I'm not even happy with it. Like, it gives me, there's no value. And you do that again by evaluating your spending. So that's the first thing. If you are struggling with overspending or you want to stop doing that, definitely evaluate your spending. The second thing is get comfortable with your accounts. So obviously I mentioned about evaluating your spending. Part of that may mean having a look at your bank accounts. And I think many people are scared of doing this because they're kind of scared of what they might find. They're kind of scared of, the amount that they might be spending. When I would argue that when you know how much you're spending, you can then take action. You are not going to be able to know, or you're not going to be able to save more if you don't actually even know how much you're spending in the first place. Like, it doesn't really add up. And so what I would say is get comfortable with just looking at your accounts. And I remember I set a challenge for one of my clients to say, just every couple of days, just have a look at your account. Doesn't even have to take long. Literally spend 30 seconds just having a look at your account. Because again, this was something that she'd never really done. But I said that if you don't know how much you're spending, or you don't even know what you're spending money on, you will continue to have the same habits of overspending. When you start looking at your accounts, you then start to ask yourself, oh, okay, I realized that I spent money here and I actually don't want to spend money here at all. Or you start to see habits and you'll then start questioning, do I still want to be spending money like that, or do I want to change something? And again, it's not for me to judge you on how you should spend your money, but you will realize what you're happy with or what you're not. You will realize what you value when it comes to your spending and what you don't value. But you will only know that when you actually start looking at some of your numbers. So when you actually start looking at your account. So that's something that you could do literally today. Have a look at your account. Does not have to take long. I'm telling you, it can literally take like 30 seconds. And this is something that I will do. I will literally just have a look at my account quickly and just see, what's been going on. And actually, it makes me even more comfortable because I have an idea on where my money is going. So many of us are scared to look at our account, but the reason why we're scared to look at our account is because we don't know where the money is going. We don't know what's happened to the money. Whereas if you decide, actually, I'm going to start looking at my account, even if it just takes a couple of minutes, I'm going to have a look and see how I spent my money, you will then start to understand, okay, no, this is where the money is going. And then you won't be surprised when it comes to the end of the month, because you will know exactly how you spent your money. Because so many of us, we struggle to get to pay the next payday, and this happened to me as well, by the way. It was, it's not just maybe you, but this happened to me where I would get to the end of the month and get close to payday, and I would literally have pennies in my account, and I'd be thinking, what on earth happened? Like, what actually happened with my money? And the reason why I would be questioning that is because I hadn't actually looked at my accounts. I wasn't comfortable with looking at my account. But when I started getting so much more comfortable and decided, you know what, let me start looking every couple of days, I would then register, oh, I've actually spent money here, I've spent money here, I've spent money there. So when it came to the end of the month, I knew exactly how I'd spent my money, and I was okay with that. It wasn't like I just decided not to spend any money at all. No, I was genuinely okay with that because I knew where my money was going. And so if you're someone who has been overspending, ask yourself, do you actually know where your money is going? And if you don't know where your money is going, I would say start getting comfortable with looking at your accounts. And again, it doesn't have to take long. It literally can take a couple of minutes. I'm pretty sure you could probably find a couple of minutes each day just to have a look and see how you've spent your money. And then just ask yourself, okay, is this something that I want to continue doing, or do I want to make a change? You won't know that until you look at your numbers. So that's the second thing. The third thing is you want to now start planning your spending. And I think I've mentioned this before, but when it comes to planning and evaluating, they're actually two different things. Evaluating is what you've done at the end. So let's say that you spent, I don't know, $2,000 for this month. When you're evaluating, what you'll be doing is you'll be looking back and asking yourself, okay, was I happy with this? Do I want to make any changes? This is how much I spent and all of that stuff, which is great. But when you're planning your spending, you're actually thinking about, okay, well, how do I want to spend my money next week? Or how do I want to spend my money next month? And those are two different things. When you're starting to plan your spending, you will then actually be telling your money, okay, this is what I want the money to do. This is how I actually want to spend the money. And so when you're doing that, you're essentially already thinking about your money and how you want to spend it. And that is very different compared to you just spending the money and then being surprised at how you spent the money, if that makes sense. When you actually start planning it, you start telling yourself, oh, no, my plan is to spend money, but this is how I want to spend it. And I think when it comes to planning, many people struggle with this just because they maybe don't know, what to plan. They don't know if it's realistic or not. But again, that's why I said the first point was evaluate your spending, because if you know how you spent in the past, that can actually help you with your spending in the future. So for me personally, what I will do is I will have a look and see how I spent my money in the past. I typically do this once a month, and I'll just have a look. Again, it literally doesn't have to take long, but I'll look at my spending and see, okay, this is how much I spend on groceries, this is how much I spend on eating out, this is how much I spend on transport, for example. And then when I'm planning my spending, all I'm just asking is, okay, do I want to spend the same amount or do I want to make a change? And especially when, inflation has just been doing its thing, that's when I will decide whether I want to change. So for example, I may have been spending 100 on groceries. So when I'm planning out my spending, I want to ask myself, okay, was 100 enough? Do I still want to spend 100? Do I want to spend a bit more? Do I want to spend a bit less? And if things are now getting more expensive, well, then I'm probably going to increase that for next month. I'm going to say, actually, rather than budgeting 100 for groceries, I'll budget 150 so that I can make sure that I have enough money. And that will stop you from overspending because you would have already planned for that spending in advance. And I think one of the biggest things is people don't think that they can plan their spending. People think that all they're supposed to do is when they're planning is maybe just plan their savings and also plan, knowing that they have bills to pay, which is definitely, something that I 100% will do and I 100% recommend. But I would say that one of the best things that you can do is plan your spending, because when you plan your spending, you are less likely to overspend because you've already told your money what you want it to do. And so whenever I plan my spending, I don't typically really overspend in areas unless there's something that, completely changes and something happens. But most of the time, I don't typically overspend because I just simply plan for it. I know exactly how I'm going to spend money. And I'm not afraid to plan for that either. So many of us are actually afraid to be planning our spending. We think that we should, and the reason why is because we think that we shouldn't be spending money. But how are you supposed to live? Do you not need to spend money? When you get paid, do you not want to enjoy some of the money? Do you not want to spend some of that money? And so for me, if you're someone who maybe feels guilty about that, or you struggle to spend money, or you feel like you shouldn't be spending money, what you want to be thinking about is, okay, well, how can I just plan for that in advance so that I know exactly how much I want to be spending, but I also know how much I should be saving as well. And so if I know that I've taken care of my savings, I can just spend the rest of the money. And I think if you're someone who has maybe done impulse purchases, like if you impulse spend a lot, again, I would argue that that is also something you can plan for. I've had so many clients who literally will create a small pot. They'll call it like a miscellaneous fund. I do the same thing where if I have impulse purchases, I literally have money sitting in my account ready for those impulse purchases. So if you're someone who struggles with overspending, I'd be asking, do you actually plan out your spending? Do you even plan out impulse spending as well? If you're someone who buys on the impulse all the time and you feel like actually there are certain things that, you know, may come up that you really value and that you would love to spend money on, that's great. Just plan for it. You don't have to call it a specific thing. You don't have to call it, oh, this is just eating out. You can literally say, this is miscellaneous. I'm going to plan for miscellaneous spending. I'm going to plan for impulse spending. And there's nothing wrong with that. So I really hope this was helpful. If you are someone who maybe needs a bit more support, this is exactly what I cover in my one-on-one coaching. So if you're someone who is looking to save a lot more money, but you want to be able to do it while spending at the same time, you want to stop that overspending and still save more, that's exactly what I do in one-on-one coaching. So definitely book a call to learn more about that. You can either check out my link in bio or my description. And if there's any questions, do let me know. But I hope this was useful, especially if you are someone who is used to spending a lot more. That is something that I used to do all the time. Again, I ended up being in my overdraft because of that. But there are certain things that you can do to help you stop overspending without having to also restrict your spending. You do not have to completely restrict your spending and cut back. You can still spend money, but when you're spending money, you will get to a point where you actually don't need to overspend at all, and you can still save as well. So, hope that was helpful. If you do have any questions, please feel free to DM me. But thank you, and I will see you soon. Bye.